Game 3 between the Indiana Fever and the Las Vegas Aces wasn't basketball. It was daylight robbery in plain sight. The kind of game where hustle, heart, and defense didn't matter because the referees decided the outcome long before the final buzzer. Inside Gainbridge Fieldhouse, the Fever were leading, outplaying the reigning champions, and forcing Las Vegas into desperation. And then, as if on cue, the whistles started. A few calls here, a few no calls there, and suddenly the entire rhythm of the game flipped. One team was being rewarded for fouls they didn't commit, the other was punished for simply existing on defense. It wasn't strategy that saved the Aces. It was protection. And no one felt the sting of that more than Lexie Hull, who turned in a career-defining performance that was overshadowed by the kind of officiating that leaves fans shaking their heads and players furious. From the very first quarter, the energy in the building was electric. Indiana's young core came out fearless, led by Aaliyah Boston's strength inside and Kelsey Mitchell's poise on the perimeter. Vegas, on the other hand, looked rattled. A'ja Wilson, their superstar, started strong but faded fast, unable to find her rhythm against Boston's relentless defense. The Fever controlled the paint, forced turnovers, and earned every bit of their early lead. But momentum is a fragile thing in this league, and all it takes is one bad whistle to shatter it. It began with what looked like a routine screen from A'ja Wilson. Only this time, Wilson extended her leg, tripping Hull. Everyone saw it, everyone except the referees. Instead of calling the obvious offensive foul, they whistled Lexi Hull for the contact. The call stunned the crowd, and the look on Hull's face said it all. This was going to be one of those nights. Minutes later, Michaela Timpson drove inside, got hacked by both Wilson and Alyssa Smith, but the officials swallowed their whistles. Indiana could have gone into halftime up 1, but instead, another phantom foul gave Vegas free throws and a lead they hadn't earned. If this were an isolated incident, fans might have let it go. But it wasn't. The pattern had been there all series long. In Game 1, Vegas clawed their way back to relevance through constant trips to the free throw line. In Game 2, Fever coach Stephanie White finally said what everyone was thinking. There was no way to find rhythm when there's a whistle every 10 seconds. It's hard for us to find flow when they're at the line every trip, she said post-game. Offense is about rhythm, timing, spacing, and we were never allowed to have that. By Game 3, it wasn't just a pattern, it was a full-blown problem. Every call seemed to tilt the floor just a little more toward Las Vegas. But the moment that sent fans into outrage came midway through the third quarter. Aaliyah Boston was called for a foul on Jackie Young, a questionable call at best. Coach White immediately motioned for a challenge, but the officials refused to acknowledge it. Seconds later, Chelsea Gray drained a three-pointer on the very next possession. Just like that, Indiana's lead disappeared. The crowd erupted, players threw their hands up, and social media exploded with clips of the sequence. Millions watched slow-motion replays of the ignored challenge, the obvious flops, and the illegal screens that went uncalled. Wasn't incompetence, it looked like favoritism. Every whistle felt like an insult to the Fever's effort. A'ja Wilson could throw an elbow into Boston's ribs with no call, but if Indiana so much as brushed a shoulder, the whistle blew. At one point, the Aces ran back-to-back illegal screens, but instead of calling those, the refs hit Hull with another foul for barely grazing her defender. When Stephanie White tried again to challenge, they refused her a second time. The frustration boiled over. Players stopped hiding their disbelief, the crowd was on its feet screaming, and the referees simply walked away from the noise as if nothing was happening. Yet in the middle of all this chaos, one player refused to crumble, Lexie Hull. Injured, taped up, and listed as questionable, she wasn't even supposed to be out there. Her back injury had limited her movement all week, but once the game started, it was as if pain didn't exist. Hull dove for loose balls, fought through screens, and played with a kind of fire that screamed defiance. Every time the officials tried to hand Vegas momentum, Hull stole it right back. She hit threes when the Fever needed them most, grabbed rebounds against bigger players, and played defense like her season depended on it, because it did. Her final stat line told a story. 16 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 blocks, a steal. She shot 6 of 10 from the field and drained 3 clutch triples that kept Indiana alive when Vegas tried to bury them. She tied the franchise playoff record for three-pointers across 2 games and did it all while grimacing through pain. Cameras caught her biting her lip after every collision, but she never slowed down. Every time the Aces went on a run, Hull answered. When Vegas tried to take control, she yanked it right back with pure effort. That's why Fever fans adore her, not for her star power, but for her heart. Her performance deserved headlines, but it was buried beneath controversy. Instead of celebrating Hull's grit, the conversation turned to officiating malpractice. And while the Fever were fighting for respect, Vegas was getting bailed out. A'ja Wilson, arguably the face of the league, had one of the worst shooting nights of her career. She went 1-for-11 by halftime, finishing 6-for-20 from the field with just 13 points. Those aren't MVP numbers. They're the kind of stats that usually spell defeat. But not when the refs are in your corner. Every time she missed, a foul seemed to appear out of thin air to give the Aces another possession. Meanwhile, Aaliyah Boston was brilliant defensively. She forced Wilson into fadeaways, contested everything, and made sure every point came at a price. But instead of being praised for her elite defense, Boston was saddled with fouls she didn't commit. The moment she tried to challenge one of them, ignored again. Wilson's struggles should have been the story, but media narratives conveniently shifted. Suddenly, analysts were crediting her rebounding and presence, instead of acknowledging how thoroughly she'd been outplayed. The Aces won the game, but even their victory looked hollow. Jackie Young carried them with 25 points. Chelsea Gray added timely buckets, and their bench filled in the gaps. Wilson didn't have to be dominant because the referees made sure she didn't have to be. Even Becky Hammon, Vegas coach, couldn't help but play the victim afterward, complaining that Wilson only shot one free throw in 38 minutes, after 3 straight games where her team practically lived at the foul line. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Indiana didn't lose because they were outplayed. They lost because they were outnumbered, 5 players against 5, plus 3 officials wearing stripes. The Fever had their win stolen. They fought hard, defended well, and stayed disciplined, only to have their momentum strangled by one-sided officiating. And now, all eyes turn to Gainbridge Fieldhouse for Game 4, the Fever's last stand. Down 2-1, their season hangs by a thread. But this time, they'll have something else on their side. 17,000 fans ready to explode at the first bad call. Becky Hammon is already planting seeds, complaining about physicality and hinting that referees might overcorrect toward Indiana. But the irony is sharp. After 3 games of favoritism, Vegas is suddenly worried about fairness. Inside Gainbridge, the Fever will feed off the noise. Boston will battle Wilson again in the paint. Kelsey Mitchell, after a quiet Game 3, will look to catch fire early. And Hull, bruised, taped, and defiant, will be ready to fight again, carrying not just her team, but the frustration of an entire fan base that knows what really happened in Game 3. Because make no mistake, the Fever didn't lose that game, they had it taken from them. And that's what makes Game 4 so dangerous for Vegas. They might have the stars, the titles, the reputation, but Indiana has the hunger. They have the crowd. They have the sense of injustice that fuels comebacks and turns arenas into infernos. When Boston powers through contact, when Mitchell buries a jumper, when Hull hits another corner 3, that building will shake. And no amount of whistles can drown that out. Game 4 isn't just survival. It's a statement. A chance for the Fever to show that heart, hustle, and fairness still mean something. If the officials let them play basketball, the Aces are in trouble. Because deep down, everyone watching knows the truth. Indiana outplayed Vegas in Game 3. They were the better team. And this time, they're coming for redemption. Do you think the Fever can bounce back? If yes, comment, "Let's go Fever," down below. And if you believe the league deserves better than games decided by whistles, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because this story isn't over yet. The fight for fairness, and for the Fever, is just beginning.